Hello writers of the world, welcome back to the Agent Mo channel. I'm Agent Mo, an author and former literary agent. I am very happy to see you again. Well, I can't see you, but I'm very happy that you're joining me today, and I have some great news. I have 28 subscribers. Yes! And here's to more. Here's to more in the future. I'm really excited about this. I'm also excited to report that it's snowing outside. Today is the first snowy day in Washington, D.C. of 3 days. Apparently, we're going to have 3 days of snow, which is awesome. I'm going to be cooking soon, so I'm not going to leave the house for 3 days. I probably am. We don't know. I don't know. But thank you again for joining me. And I actually have a surprise for you today, another surprise. I'm going to be talking about our topic, but at the end of the video, I do have a query letter that I received from one of you, and I'm going to be reading it and providing slight feedback. I'm so excited about this query letter. Actually, I read it just now before I sat down because I wanted to be surprised by it, and I loved it. It was such a I'm going to leave that for later. If you want to skip to that query letter, you can do that by clicking on this timestamp here or going over to this time. Otherwise, stick around. I'm going to talk about comp titles. All right. So what is a comp title? Comp titles or comparable titles are titles that are similar to your book or books that are similar to your work in progress in terms of genre, in terms of voice, style, setting, and it could also be in terms of saleability and marketability if you're that ahead in your publishing process. What does that even mean? Why is that important? Well, it's really important actually. When I first started querying, I had no idea what a query letter was. I had no idea what a comp title was. I don't remember ever seeing comp titles in queries, but there was this single line at the beginning of the query letter, or even towards the end, where the author included books that were kind of similar to their own, where they would say something like, well, my book is written in the style of blah, blah, blah. And that's essentially what a comp title is. And the reason why it's important is because it allows you to sell your book to an agent. How? What does an agent get out of a comp title? Well, one thing, if an agent has sold a similar book, then the agent will know how to sell this book to an editor in a very similar style. Also, the agent will be able to sell that book to an editor using that comp title or comp titles, because essentially you should have two, sometimes you can have three, depending on the relevancy of the comp titles. But preferably do not go over three, and we'll talk a little bit about the rules as well. So you sell it to the agent, and the agent sells it to the editor, and the comp titles are important in all of those stages in order to find placement for that book in the market. Because if your book is unique and one of a kind, which, I mean, let's face it, it doesn't really happen very often. There aren't that many new ideas or new books, unique books out there. So if your book is unique, it's going to be really hard to sell because there aren't any precedents to that book. So the best thing to do is to think about the marketability of your book and where it's going to fall on the shelf. You can have various types of comp titles, believe it or not. And again, the comp title should be very similar to your book in the genre and in the saleability. And the genre includes also the voice, it includes the setting, it also includes just the writing style itself or the theme. So if your book is similar to another important book, big book, a bestseller, feel free to include that. Or this is something that some agents don't necessarily encourage, but can be useful. And it's using a movie or a TV show, a famous Netflix show that came out very recently and it's doing really big. You can include that as a comp title. Now, again, the caveat is not all agents will accept that. So you have to figure out, based on the submission guidelines that you're supposed to read, if an agent accepts a movie or a TV show comp title. If not, then you're going to have to do your own research and find books that are similar to yours. All right. Now, what you have to keep into consideration is, well, what makes a comp title relevant? It has to be a relevant book. By that I mean it has to be very recent. Nothing that's too old. I mean, you can't use you can't use The Lord of the Rings, you can't use Harry Potter for different reasons, but it has to be similar. It has to be somewhat recent. Another thing is make sure that it follows the same format. So it has to be within the same genre. If you're writing a literary fiction, make sure your comp title is literary fiction. If you're writing a fantasy, make sure your comp title is a fantasy. And similarly with the voice, similarly with the style, setting, and theme. Another thing you want to take into consideration is make sure that the comp title is not one of the major bestsellers that broke all world records. So you don't want to ever compare it to Harry Potter. You don't want to compare it to The Lord of the Rings, although everybody has written that one book that they think compares to Harry Potter and The Lord of the Rings. Chances are it's too far of a stretch, all right? You don't want to compare with the bestsellers. You want to compare with something that's more realistic. And it's going to take a lot of research, and I'm going to be honest about that. But that's what you need to do. You want to attract that agent. You want to make sure you have a comp title that's relevant, recent, and also not unrealistic. You're not going to sell an agent by telling them that your book is similar to a huge bestseller. It just doesn't work that way, sadly. Comp titles, I mean, it's a fairly simple topic, and if you need more information about it, I'm attaching a very interesting article that I found online down below, so you can read that. I'm also going to add some tips on my website at www.moshalaby.com, so you can visit that too. All right, now let's move to the section that you've all been waiting for, reading the query letter. And again, I really like this query letter, and I want to thank the sender. I know he didn't explicitly say that I can't say his name, so I'm going to. And let me just go ahead and read the query letter. It says, Dear Mo Shalaby, I'm writing seeking representation for my first novel, Brown Odysseus, an own voices urban fantasy novel with elements of horror, complete at 61,000 words. After being apart from Montserrat for too long, Roque finds himself prisoner of cartel men in north of Mexico. All he ever wanted was to be with her in New York City, where he knows she is waiting for him. But to meet her again, he had to cross Mexico and every single one of the dangers he encounters in that country, including the gang members who have kept him prisoner for over a month now. Okay, so it's I have to read on, but I'm just so excited about this. I really like this query letter. It's so good. He knows his days are numbered, and his only regret is not being able to see her smile one last time. When the night he knows everything will end comes, he and 4 other men who were taken prisoners with Roque the same day are lined up to be executed. But in a miraculous way, he escapes from his executioners to later meet the Mexican goddess of death. This just gets better and better. I love this query letter. She offers him a deal. She'll save his life and will help him meet Montserrat in New York, but in return he has to pay a rather high price. If he refuses, he'll lose Montserrat forever, and probably will die in the worst imaginable way, but accepting the deal means he'll lose his soul. He's doomed whether he accepts or not. I believe this book would appeal to, and this is where the author does really well, including his comp titles. I believe this book would appeal to fans, readers of Neil Gaiman's American Gods, Julio Cortázar's The Idol of the Cyclades, and retellings of classic myths and legends under the prism of today's world. So as you can see, he included his comp titles, and he also included a string of information that helps kind of better understand the setting, the theme, which is classic myths. My name is Christian H. Morales. I'm a 33-year-old Honduran living in La Verne, Tennessee. I came to this country to pursue a career in literature after spending the last 10 years in Honduras, focused on literary projects with online libraries and new writers who never had their words read nor their voices heard. That's so nice. I wrote this book thinking about my favorite classic, The Odyssey. Me too. It's my favorite classic. And how it needed to be translated into a story placed in today's society with strong characters of color that we can relate to, who may be struggling with the same things as we do, and how the fantasy element can be seen and experienced by these characters on today's world. I love it. I love it. I love it. That last sentence, though, it's a little too long. So let me just go back to the beginning. I love how you began, but Remember, Christian, we want to make sure that we're personalizing to the agent. So when the agent reads this, you want to say, why did you seek them out specifically? What about them captured your attention and wanted you or kind of enticed you to query them? So I would put that in the beginning. Otherwise, I'm going to have to be honest. I love the rest of it. I wouldn't want to remove anything. I think it's perfect. I think it's flawless. You included your comparables, you included your hook, and boy, was it a hook. It's a hook. I love it. And in the end, you included your credentials, great credentials. If you do have any kind of stories that you've published, you can include that. If not, again, don't worry about it. There are some spelling errors. I would work on that. The Odyssey is spelled incorrectly. But towards the end, that one sentence that where you say, characters of color we can relate to who may be struggling with the same things as we do, and how the fantasy element can be seen and experienced by these characters on today's world. I don't think you need to include that last part about the fantasy element and all that stuff. Just shorten it. Although it's one page, it's perfect. You can keep it. It's beautiful. I love it, love it, love it. I think you're going to get a lot of hits with this one, and send it out. I want to read this. Another thing that I've noticed is it's a fantasy novel with horror elements, but it's at 61,000 words. That's barely the minimum for a debut novel. And I'm going to talk about word counts and genres in another episode. But I would say if you can try and bring that number up, it would be better, because you can write fantasies all the way up to 110, I think 120,000 words. But other than that, yes, this is something that I definitely want to read. It kind of reminds me a bit of another novel. Anyways, I'm not going to mention that. Also, the title. I would reconsider the title, Brown Odysseus. I feel like you can find, and I'm not shaming this title. I really like it, but I feel like it's a little on the nose. You can definitely find another title that's a little more creative, and I would love it to just bring out some elements of the Odyssey and just embed it in a beautiful setting, in a Mexican Hispanic setting that just says, I want to read this, or you need to read this, you need to pick this book up. Other than that, I think this is a beautiful, beautiful idea. And actually I have an idea very similar to this, and yeah, I would love to read this. And yeah, good luck. So other than that, thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with me in this episode. If you have any comments that you would like to send to me, please include that down below. I'll be making videos every week, once a week. I do have another idea for a video series that I want to work on. I'll be coming up with that soon, and I hope you can stick with me. Other than that, if you need any information, my query submissions are still open. Please feel free to send me your queries. I will have another query reading next week. And have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful week. If you have anything that you need, please make sure to ask me, and take care. Goodbye. Have a wonderful day. Bye.